to Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection Show, a podcast covering nature, wildlife, science, and the environment. Welcome to the Nature Connection, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about trees, and we're going to be going to the northeast section of Los Angeles, and we're going to find out what is happening at this amazing award-winning organization called Northeast Trees. And this organization has just been featured on PBS, so we've got the link for that in the episode notes. For the organization, you can go to northeasttrees.org. And I've got to give them a big shout out because they are also recognized by the California Association of Nonprofits as a 2025 nonprofit of the year, which is pretty substantial, and it's very exciting. So check out their website again, northeasttrees.org. We have Joe Laskin joining us. He's a director of development to tell us about the organization and what they do. But first, I'm going to bring in our friend here on Big Blend Radio, Cheryl Leutjen. She is an author and an environmental advocate. She tries to teach us a little humor along the way when we all get stressed out with what's going on in the world. Her latest two books are Love Earth Now, as well as Madness on the Brink of Eco-Apocalypse. You can go to her website, CherylLeutjen.com. She also has a podcast. So welcome back, Cheryl. How are you?
Thanks so much. Always great to chat with you, Lisa. And I am really thrilled to be here talking about one of my very favorite groups in the world. So,
well, this is all for you, getting them on the show. And I believe you're a board member, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. How did you find out about them?
I actually was looking for an opportunity to be of service, and I went through another organization who recommended them to me, which is kind of ironic because I had known the founder of the group years ago, and I'd kind of forgotten about them. And then I got reintroduced and really glad.
Now, does it help when you we all get stressed out about what's happening with the environment? Obviously, LA has been through a lot with wildfires. I mean, right now, as we're recording, the Grand Canyon is still dealing with fires. I don't even want to talk about the tornadoes we've just been through recently, Nancy and I, but there's just a lot going on. Obviously, we have weather issues, but we're seeing more and more natural disasters, and everything that's happening, it feels kind of at that eco-apocalypse is happening. So to get out and have some action, and like what you're doing, being on the board, volunteering, maybe planting trees, doing those kinds of things in your, when you look at your history of doing things for the environment, even writing books, does it help to take action?
Absolutely. That's why, and when I wrote this book, all the reasons I am mad about what's happening and what we're not doing about it, that's why at the end of every chapter, I showcase a group that is doing something, because I think action is the antidote to despair.
Yeah, Joan Baez.
I was getting plenty despair writing this book. And then I would turn around and find this great group that was doing something about it, and I instantly felt better. And I reminded myself why I am active with Northeast Trees, because it is essential for mental health and well-being, kind of positive action. Absolutely protesting, if that's, you're called to do that, that is a good thing to do. I also think it's good to invest in things that have a lasting impact, like planting a tree or feeding people, that it's something that's heartwarming and also does serve us and the planet in all the ways.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Joe. I'm glad to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm great. Happy to be here, Lisa. Really happy to be on the show.
Yeah, and you want to give us a little history, because this kind of started in the late 70s, early 80s, right, for Northeast Trees?
Actually, early 90s.
Early 90s. Sorry, I don't know where I went.
Yeah.
When I was born in LA in the mid 70s, so I think I just kind of went home there for a second. That's okay.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So yeah, Northeast Trees, we were started in the late 80s, I think officially incorporated in 1990.
See, I was kind of there.
You were kind of there. And we are coming out of this, but I've described ourselves as a sleeping giant, and we're waking up. We've been a huge force in urban forestry, park design, build, and workforce development in Los Angeles for over 35 years. I love our origin story because, our founder, Scott Wilson, was kind of everything that we embody as an organization. He was an educator. He was a landscape architect. He was an arborist. He taught horticulture, and he loved working with kids, and he loved, teaching kids and young people about trees and green space and habitat. And so when he retired, he spoke to his wife, Claire Lee, and he said, I want to plant 5 trees a day until the day I die. And that vision, that small but ambitious vision, was really what started Northeast Trees. And we've doubled and tripled his vision, by the way. I mean, we've planted over 100,000 trees. I think we've equated it to over 10 a day. So we've fully reached and maximized Scott's vision. The vision really was centered with, planting trees and hiring young men and women. But what really makes us unique, and you can't really tell it in the name, but we are LA's oldest design build nonprofit. So Scott was an architect and an arborist. And so he brought that whole suite of knowledge to Northeast Trees and positioned us as a design build, meaning we have landscape architects, we have arborists, we have staff with engineering capabilities. And we are in many ways a one-stop shop for transformative, community-led environmental projects. And our work started on the LA River. We started planting trees on the LA River when it wasn't what it is today. It's not a fully functioning 51-mile greenway yet, but at the time it was completely unrealized and this kind of a back thought in people's mind. I used to go down to the river when I was a kid, and there was a chain link fence and a small pathway, and you'd throw rocks in the channel or something, and it was a weird place that you didn't feel like you were supposed to be. Scott and Aaron Thomas and Tom Dwyer, some of our first employees, took that risk and really just started planting trees and creating shade and gathering spaces for people. And that shade and that gathering helped people realize the massive potential of this 51-mile greenway from Canoga Park to Long Beach. And that was really where we cut our teeth. And we have designed and built over 25 LA River parks. I think of the 50 plus that are existing now. And then over the years, I'm sure we'll get into it more, Lisa. We have a whole suite of projects now that span on the street right-of-way, residential projects, public housing, school greening, fire resilience, and open space management. So we've grown in our capacity, in our scale, in our impact, and also, in our region. We started in Northeast Los Angeles, which is an ode to our name, or a community-based organization. But because of the need of trees and good jobs, we've expanded to areas like East LA, South LA, Watts, historic South Central. And so we've spread our wings, and in the time I've been here, we've doubled our staff and increased our revenue quite a bit, and been able to really and as a virtue, increase our impact in communities that really are in the most need from a statewide perspective of greenhouse gas reductions and pollution and poverty. So we make a huge impact in the communities that have suffered decades and are still suffering environmental injustices and social injustices.
Well, the environmental injustice really becomes a social injustice, and it happens. It's like a coin, right? And so from podcasts we've done over the years, what I've learned, especially when it comes to trees and parks, that it often goes to places like, hey, we've got a posh community, let's have a posh park. And then the other communities are going, hey, we're not so healthy over here, we don't need trees. Don't give them trees. It's like the underserved communities are often underserved in regards to green space, which means it adds up to health issues. It does lead up. And I think there's a huge disconnect of the general public not actually understanding how it just puts underserved communities even further down and further down on the totem pole. And everybody doesn't understand why are kids malnutrition? Why do they have asthma? Why do they not have shade to be able to go and read a book under, a big old tree, right? Yeah. So it just, it doesn't help, real estate does it, it doesn't. And then just the general health of what a tree can bring to a community is massive. So those kinds of projects are very dear to us here, that the more trees we plant, I think if everyone adopted this kind of thing around the world, that it can really change what's happening with climate change, and change in a positive way.
Yeah. And I'll say, Lisa, that's that speaks to our approach. We, you do see in the environmental sector, not so much anymore, but historically, that kind of savior approach, like we're the environmental group, we're going to come in and save this community. And that is not at all what we do. And so we, and we try to your point, equip these communities with the skills and knowledge and action, and give them the opportunity to create their own change
and learn. So it's give a man a fish, give a man versus
right. I mean, if we could replicate Northeast Trees as a community-based model all across the world, I mean, that would be our dream, right? We know we can't do it all, but we do have in Northeast Los Angeles and now South Los Angeles a really, we have the community ties, and our workforce development, the fact that we hire young men and women from the community ages, 18 to maybe 30, who might not even know that pursuing a career working and planting trees in your community is an option. It's really that initial exposure. We provide that initial exposure for those young men and women. We train them, we educate them, we uplift them to the next rung of their employment ladder.
That's amazing.
And and it's ultimately we want them to spread that message to their community, their family, their social network. But it's complex because this environmental injustice is by design. And just to give you an example, we work in a public housing development that's next to 15 lanes of transit, and it's about 100 feet away with no sound wall. That was done by design. Years ago, the poorest communities were put into the most hazardous areas of the city with small parkways and low overhead power lines. And so we really have to be creative about how we bring green resources to these communities. In communities like Brentwood, Beverly Hills, you can plant a large canopy oak tree in the street because you have the space. But in some neighborhoods in South LA, you have much smaller parkways with lower overhead power lines. So then we look into the residential yard. Okay, well, is there room to plant an oak tree maybe in the front yard and have a one-on-one conversation with that resident and have them maintain it and have them care for it and really understand the benefit that this is providing. So we have to be creative, but we have the community ties and connections and trust to be invited back to these communities and to work with them. And it's not like we're looking on a map to see where is the most hazardous area. Oh, we're going to work there. These are decade-long relationships that we keep going through bringing the benefit of employment and green resources. And
I love that you're doing the employment. Obviously volunteering is fantastic, but the employment side is super important to bring that in on the economic side. I think that's where another disconnect, but also communities come together. Are you seeing LA as a community uniting over something as simple as a majestic tree, a majestic oak? Come on, they're awesome. Are you seeing community and friendships even formed? I want to go with Cheryl on this. On the volunteer side, do you see that happen where people are getting together and supporting each other that maybe didn't know each other beforehand?
Well, yes. I mean, everything Joe just said is all the reasons why I love Northeast Trees Beyond. There are other groups that plant trees. You can go on Volunteer Manager, whatever, site you want to, and you can find a tree planting opportunity near you. What Northeast Trees does beyond that is reintroducing people, even in their own community, with nature, people who have not had nature in their community so much, and to reintroduce just the importance and the value of connecting with a tree that they've never even had the experience of. And that just breaks my heart. And so it's really one of the many reasons I treasure my support of Northeast Trees. And also the young people who were training, a lot of them say, I had never even noticed that there was green stuff growing around me because that wasn't a priority. That connection wasn't there. And then expanding beyond that out to the volunteer base, many of whom are, I think really moved by the experience of working with Northeast Trees because it is an ongoing enterprise. We work on big projects. It's not just, we're going out to plant trees here today and there tomorrow and kind of hopscotch and wherever. There's real work that goes in and thought that goes into these projects, and many funded by grants. And so we have to specify exactly what benefits we're providing, how we're going to involve the community. Those are all aspects of the grants that we apply for and that fund this work.
And it won't work without the input of the community, right, Joe? You have to have the community be involved. Otherwise, it just falls flat.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your question, Lisa, I think, I'll touch on that, but also I wanted to just say that I think, I've been here for 7 years, and over the 7 years, I've seen a marked increase in the engagement and care for trees and the desire to learn more about trees from the general public. And one of the greatest examples, and I'll make a plug here to the audience, is that we have every first Saturday of the month, we have a native plant nursery at Ascot Hills Park, which is in El Sereno. And it's a free event where anyone can come and learn about native plants and how to collect seed, how to grow the native plants, what medicinal properties do they have, what edible properties did they have, how did indigenous people use these plants, and then actually have a chance to grow them and plant them. And that has been coupled with things like the Black Walnut Day Collective, which is a collective of organizations that have created resources and brought awareness to the Southern California black walnut, the Juglans californica, which is one of our endemic tree species here in Los Angeles, and it is only endemic to you'll only find it naturally occurring in the world in Northeast Los Angeles. And I just talked to our urban forestry director, who said he has young coming up to him at tree distributions asking for black walnuts. That never happened
That's cool.
before. And that is that's just a small example of the excitement and that has been generated from our work. And also, I think, it's a bit different, but after the fires, I have never experienced people coming together in a way like that. And it was, and from our lens, we coupled it with the need to really keep our park safe and to engage people. And so I think that brought another level of awareness to it. And we're working right now on a fire resilience project that's actually going to be studying what native plants perform the best in fires. What plants can retain the most amount of moisture? Like purple needlegrass is one. So we're doing this micro grassland of purple needlegrass, and we may even do, bring it into a laboratory with some academic partners we're working with at LMU and test how it burns and the burn rate. And because there has been anecdotal evidence that this species will slow fires down. So we're now combining that galvanization of people after the fire with their interest of native plants and trying to produce some really important data and scientific studies that can drive forward, more native plants in Los Angeles and continue to educate people on why we need to invest in trees and plants and all those beautiful.
I think this is so important to talk about because, and you say it very well on your site, northeasttrees.org, everyone, about how biodiverse Los Angeles is. And I think people forget, you've got deserts on one part of you in LA County, you've got the coast, you've got mountains, you've got all these little valley areas. So it is very, very biodiverse. And, when you think, we're from LA area, but we lived in Arizona at one point, and now we're on the road full time. But people go, Arizona, it's all saguaro cactus and gumbies and Gumby cactus, as I say. So they think we're one big patch of sand and a Gumby cactus. And that's so not true. We have oaks in Arizona. We have aspens, depending on where you go, and the ponderosa pine. So it's kind of that same thing in LA that I think people kind of just think you're all a bunch of palm trees on the beach. That's what LA is, right? So I think what your program is doing is also teaching people about this biodiversity if you work with it, it can help mitigate fires and things. And I wanted to touch on that too, because I think we talk trees, and having been through a number of wildfires, there's this thing of, yes, where you should have trees placed around on your property in the proximity to your house. But at some point, some people just go, I'm not having any trees because then I'm going to have, it's going to get my house. So I want to go into that about how it's important to look at the biodiversity of trees, grasses, like you're saying. I love that you're doing the native plant program, but to understand that trees actually will help mitigate some of those fires, right? And we need to touch on that for people to not necessarily have that fear of trees and home.
Yeah, you said it really well, Lisa. I mean, that's, it's something that it's a line that we have to toe now. And, I actually recently purchased a house. And so I'm having that same kind of thing, right? I had a palm tree in my front yard that was way too close to my house that I took out. And you really have to be careful. There is there's great resources online about defensible space that CAL FIRE puts out about, in the 0 to 5 foot zone, you should have this. And in the 10 to 20 foot zone, you should have this. And I think, following those guidelines is what I would advise most people. And then, getting involved with local groups and looking at, Northeast Trees, Theodore Payne, looking at sites like CalFlora and CalScape and reading about the trees, because, many of the trees, and most notably the coast live oak, they are fire resistant. And that doesn't mean they don't burn, but they burn at a different rate, and the ember cast is not what a palm tree would be. And as we said earlier, Lisa, we did an event with LAFD, and they told us that palm trees, which aren't trees, are the number one accelerator in the movement of the fires in January. So I think it is important for people to understand that, trees are not bad, and they don't necessarily pose a risk to your property, but you do have to have them properly trimmed and spaced appropriately from your house. Native trees are the best option. And we've got three main ones. You've got the California black walnut, the California sycamore, and the coast live oak. And there are other tree, I call them tree-sized shrubs, like the toyon and the Mexican elderberry, that are more shrubby, less like columnar. But all of these native trees are adapted to our hot, dry environment, and they do retain moisture well. So it's really, I think, about understanding the guidelines, working with your local agencies and nonprofits, and then, but trees are not, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And the benefit that they will provide in terms of, just you walking outside and seeing that tree, or me sitting here and looking outside and seeing the tree that's planted in front of my house, that actually has scientifically proven to help you focus, to help you feel better, increase your mental health, so many different things. There's a stat that it's probably a couple years old, but I think sitting under a tree for 10 minutes is like the equivalent of taking a dose of Ritalin for someone who has ADHD. That's what it can do to
Nature is medicine.
It is medicine. So the benefits that these trees provide far outweigh any cost, but you do have to be like aware of the guidelines and the trimming.
Well, that's what I was going to say. By being with an organization like yours, this is a way for people to get educated and get involved and be part of it. And that dissolves fear. Cheryl, yeah?
You're saying, and they're still evolving. People are still studying the recent fires and the impacts. I've heard there's a study of whether the trees caused the house to catch on fire, or the house caused the trees to catch on fire. The house caught the fire first. And so so I would stay tuned to what the evolving guidance is too. If you're
It's interesting. Yeah. Because also people create heat islands using gravel. And we saw that in the desert. I mean, your trees and things like that start burning because your house actually heats up by gravel.
Yeah.
And trees do so much of filtering out pollutants, air pollutants, which is really important for us here in the city of Los Angeles. So I'm really urging people not to rush out and cut down their trees and get the guidance, or wait until it evolved, but trim them up for sure. But let's not be hasty, because we do need our trees, and for habitat and for food, for all the reasons.
And to assure people, we don't have the data yet, but Northeast Trees is part of at least one, maybe two coalitions and working groups with a bunch of other organizations across California that are working on this and studying this. So we are an advisor in those groups, and so when that data, Cheryl, is released, we're going to be at the forefront of consuming that and sharing it. So, and another thing too that I recently read was that my house has a crawl space. The grates, the size of the grates that you put on your crawl space and the attic spaces is also a huge factor. So there's a lot of information that I think people need to just wait to see, but trees are not the issue, I don't think.
Well, they're also part of habitat for wildlife and for birds. And that's a really big thing, and just to get kids to even see what birds are there, and that helps the native species actually have a place to thrive. So this is a really cool thing. I wanted to go into the programs like you're talking about, schools and then even residential places. So it looks like you're going in, having these working relationships of what can be done. Are you allowed to? Because there's a lot of red tape that goes with trees. You may not see the red tape on the tree, but there's red tape involved in a lot of that side that you guys deal with, right? So I bow down to you all doing that. But yeah, for the schools, tell us a little bit about families, how they can get involved, schools can get involved.
Yeah, it's great. So, as I said earlier, Scott, our history goes back to green schoolyards, and we were part of the LADWP Cool School program, I think 25 years ago, that when this movement of green schoolyards first started, we were at that forefront. Then I will say there was a bit of a lull because, whether it's LAUSD or another school district, whom we enjoy working with, it can be really challenging to jump through all the different hoops and fees and delays that can happen in working with that. So there was a lull in that, but in about 2019, we had a pretty significant green schoolyard project funded called the Buchanan Street Elementary School Project. And why it's significant is one of the best, I think, green schoolyard projects in Los Angeles is Eagle Rock Elementary School. Cheryl probably has been there or seen it. It's a beautiful campus, and it's kind of one of the gold standards of green schoolyards. That's at least how it's looked at in the industry. Buchanan was a control site for Eagle Rock on a study that was happening with Occidental College. So Occidental was studying the impacts that a green schoolyard can have on young people. And they were putting like Fitbits on kids and seeing how much more they were running and their heart rates and all these different things. And also looking at test scores and social behavior and cognition and all those different things. And of course, they concluded that, green schoolyards are the best thing in the world. And I mean, you know what I mean? But Buchanan was the control site. So it was basically a perfect example of what a typical LUSD campus is. And so we got funded to do that work in 2019, pre-COVID. We've had to phase out the project because it's been a challenge to get it done with this fixed government grant that we had. But I'm really happy to say we took out 22,000 square feet of asphalt at this school just last month. It is completely transformed. We have a fruit orchard, we have a native meadow, and the next phase will include, more outdoor classrooms and site furnishings. And so that's a great example. And then currently we're working on 7 other schools through a CAL FIRE grant that got funded last year or late 2023, actually. And that's it's not to do as much asphalt removal, but it's really where can we take out asphalt, plant trees, and maximize shade? Because at some of these schools, the kids can't even go out for recess because their shoes are melting, or they can't sit on the blacktop because it's too hot. So they'll spend PE indoors watching a movie or indoors doing some activity. And so that's kind of a snapshot of what we're doing. And then how to get involved, I would say we are part of the Living Schoolyard Coalition, which is a really important statewide coalition with a lot of other nonprofits, including Northeast Trees. We are at capacity with our 8 schools right now, but we are looking when those projects close, which they will this year and probably in the summer of next year, looking to get our next cohort of schools. So if you have a school that that has need, I would encourage you to reach out to Northeast Trees. And our capacity is somewhat limited because we're a 30-person nonprofit, although we are growing. But there are a list of other nonprofits in the Living Schoolyard Coalition who are working on this. And I would encourage people to reach out to the coalition to understand what groups are working in what areas. There was just a solicitation put out through CAL FIRE for the Aliso Canyon area. So like the Northwest San Fernando Valley now has a dedicated grant program all for green schoolyards. So the Living Schoolyard Coalition, CAL FIRE has been leading as a state agency a lot of the funding programs. So they're a great resource. They're very transparent. They're very communicative. You can just reach out to their grant administrators and they'll reach right back out to you. So I think that's the best way to get involved. But I will just be transparent. These projects are incredibly complex, time consuming, and the sad reality, I guess, is sometimes you get them funded and you can't get it done in the time that maybe that kid is in school, right? And so that's just the reality of where we're at. But the coalition is working really hard right now to push LAUSD in a positive way, to say, hey guys, we need to break down the red tape here and make it easier for us so we can get through more of these projects so that the kids at these schools can actually realize the benefits of these projects before they graduate and go on to the next school.
Yeah, and that's for any of these projects, right? You're talking about funding like grants and things like that. And right now, as we see the country's going through a lot of defunding, and education is one that is being hit, so many environmental grants. And I mean, you're talking about PBS, you were just on that, and that's been defunded. So there's a lot of defunding going more on a federal level, right? Which does trickle down into a state level. So how can you be helped in that, as in Northeast Trees be helped in regards to possible future defunding happening, not because of the organization, but because it's kind of what's the trickle down could possibly happen for you guys? Are you looking for, can corporations come and help? Can local businesses come and help? Or even, estates, that kind of thing, come and support you?
Great question. Yes.
I have to. I want to beat the drum. I'm just like, come on, everybody, bring the money.
Yes.
Show your green.
Yeah.
Money doesn't grow on trees, but we need your green for the trees,
Yes. So yeah, you're right, Lisa. I think the number one way that people can help is by donating. Monetary donations to Northeast Trees, northeasttrees.org/support us. That is probably the number one way you can support. I will also say volunteer time. And I understand that, money is a renewable resource. Time is not. So time is super valuable. I value time a lot. But if you're not able to give, I think contact Northeast Trees, contact a group in your neighborhood, see how you can get involved. Because as Cheryl said earlier, service really does bring you that positive reinforcement and helps keep the momentum going. Definitely. We had $2.5 million frozen earlier this year. Now, some of that is getting unfrozen or kind of reworked. There's been a slow kind of unraveling in a good way of that. But I will say that corporations have been a big help. I have noticed, however, this year that corporations have tightened their budgets. This year specifically, we have a whole corporate social responsibility program. So if you're with a corporation, you reach out to us where you can do exclusive tree planting days and restoration days for your company. And we've seen it take a slight dip this year. However, I've seen the foundation and individuals step up in a huge way this year. And in America, individuals are about 70% of the giving in this country. Of the $560 billion that are philanthropically transacted in the United States, 70% are individuals.
I did not know that.
That aspect is I think what's going to really help us through this period. But rest assured, we are continuing to work with our government agencies who have federal funding or state agencies that have state funding to make sure we bring that funding in, because that is really the foundational funding that allows these projects to get off the ground. And then we can bring in the corporate, the foundation, the individual to bring more of the bells and whistles and bring the project to full completion. But yeah, we really need, this is a time in our history where we really need people, individual people, corporations, foundations, family foundations to step up and with their wallet sometimes really show where their priorities lie.
And it's not just on the defunding side, it's the climate. I mean, we've had a lot of things not just defunded, but also some incredible setbacks. And I don't say incredible in a positive, it's just been pretty big setbacks in our steps to mitigate climate change. So when we talk about get on it, if you're feeling a little stressed about everything, and if you're just stressed from traffic in LA, go plant a tree. Or give some money, or do something. It'll make you feel better. I want to go to Cheryl here because I know you're on the board as well, Cheryl, and obviously very dedicated to the environment. What are some of the programs that you really feel special about with Northeast Trees that they do? So just to I want people to have more reason to get involved, whether it's, even just sharing this video and going and watching the PBS special and sharing this with people. The more it gets out there in the world, the better.
Well, I mentioned earlier, I am a huge fan of the training workforce development program and reconnecting young people to nature. That's huge. We've mentioned that. Another aspect that I appreciate is Northeast Trees also does work with water conservation, which is a huge issue here. Some pilot programs with green streets where runoff water is collected, cleaned up, and used beneficially. Also, habitat restoration. I mean, we have so much pressure in urban environments on habitats, and it's very, very difficult to maintain adequate habitat to ensure healthy populations of critters. And so there's so many benefits even just to our tree planting projects, which providing habitat, but also there's specific projects dedicated to habitat restoration and water conservation. And those are two things that don't get talked about as much with Northeast Trees, and yet they're huge. They may have a huge impact.
Yeah, I think even planting trees, obviously you learn when you're doing all these projects where to plant what, and shade component, that really helps mitigate overwatering and watering as frequently of other plants. And what you're doing with native plants, that's also really huge because shade, if your plants are out there in the sun 24/7 kind of deal, you're going to start watering them more. And that's not always the right thing because water also takes minerals away. So I think what you're doing is really cool in this planning. And I hope it, when people get on board with this and you're working with schools and counties and parks and rec, all of these people that it's like, oh, how have we been doing things? I mean, we travel full-time documenting parks and public lands, went from national parks to all parks because all parks matter. I don't care if it's a pocket park. If there's one little pocket park with a tree, that's doing something, and it helps us not have a dead space. I mean, we have dead zones in our ocean, but we've also created immense dead zones across this country with, just like you're saying, asphalt is just it's a killer. And by planting trees and doing it right and having communities and organizations work together, I think it makes people go home and go, oh, wow, we can even just do our backyard a little bit better, and we can get involved in small ways. So I think it's not just the programs you're doing, but it's the education and the, oh, we could do this, that little light bulb moment. But
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen parks where, you go for a walk and they put a sprinkler system that's just going directly into a street, and it just makes me die. I'm like, I've seen it even in desert communities. I'm like, come on, people, stop it. It happens. But to have like stewards, community stewards be involved in this, and if they were the ones seeing the water go in the wrong place, they're not going to shut up. They're going to do something, right?
Yeah,
And
and we're in a way, not in a way, we are piloting kind of this new approach, because I will say this is something I think about quite a bit, because you're right, LA is huge. We do have a big park system. I was very involved personally this year in the budget conversation at the city of Los Angeles, and I'm not going to get it all into that. But one thing that remains true is Rec and Parks, who are our partners and have been for a long time, hardly get the funding they need to operate their department at a full clip. And so what happens is parks suffer. And you find that oftentimes parks in the lower income neighborhoods suffer to a greater degree. But one thing because it's an interesting time in Los Angeles right now, because the city of Rec and Parks is going through their park needs assessment, which we're involved in. We're not on the team directly, but we're an important stakeholder and working with some groups behind the scenes to make sure that our priorities are heard through that process. But that's going on, and I think in that we're also having conversations with folks at Rec and Parks to see how can Northeast Trees pilot and showcase and create a precedent for nonprofits stewarding parkland with communities. And we actually, Lisa, I don't know if you know this, we own 37 acres, own and operate 37 acres of habitat in the urban core of Los Angeles. It's a property called Flat Top. It's located in a Montecito Heights, Lincoln Heights area, about a mile or two as the crow flies from downtown Los Angeles. And it's an expansive open space. It's just hills and open space and native habitat, obviously some annual grasses and invasive plants, but I'll keep it short. We acquired the land in 2014. And since then have been stewarding the land with just as Northeast Trees. We've been raising money, galvanizing the community, working creatively through events and other collaborations. We actually have a collaboration with the San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians right now to bring the tribe into what we're doing at Flat Top. And so what we're trying to showcase to Rec and Parks is, hey, if we have access, if we have a little bit of funding, if we have the agreements in place and we can break down that red tape, we can help you. We can help maintain these parks. We can do it in a way that's actually going to be more effective, maybe even more cost effective, but more effective in the long term. And really, with the whole goal of just improving our park system in Los Angeles, because they can't do it alone. And you have groups like the Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, one of our close partners, who also is over capacity. They don't have, there is a need for local nonprofits like us who have the ability to steward and take care of land to step up and work with our agency partners, because it's a big need currently for us in the city.
So everyone needs to work together. And
Yes,
it's not just LA. It's not
That's
just LA
right.
at all. I can tell you that from what we've experienced, that it's communities have to get together. The only way is a community, and the nonprofits work together, because everybody's got a strength, and then everyone's got to use those strengths to buffer and unite. I love this. I love what you're doing. And I could talk for 10 years about trees and LA and water conservation. And I love what you're doing with what I think you're really right about that, Cheryl. Water conservation is massive. It's massive. In closing, I just wanted to go to both of you and find out if there's something we haven't mentioned. Please bring it up, and just, a highlight of what Northeast Trees does. And of course, PBS, they need to watch the PBS special that was there. So that is in the episode notes. But let's go to you, Cheryl. And thanks again for bringing Joe on the show so that we can spotlight this amazing organization.
I want to share a bit of a story. One of the young people that's in our program that we have trained, Will Guerrero, has been working at our site at the Ramona Gardens Public Housing Project. And it is a place where his grandparents lived when they first came to this country with their hopes and dreams of building a better life for their family in the new country. And now he's their planting trees in a park and making it even more accessible and welcoming for that community. And it's stories like that just get me.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone go to CherylLeutjen.com, and that link is in the episode notes. Learn more about her books, listen to her podcast, and just learn more. She's awesome. And follow her on social media. She's always posting something like an ironing board as part of her office. Anyway, that you just go see. You'll see what I mean. I'm going to send you some clothes because I don't know how to iron anymore.
Oh, I don't iron with my ironing board.
I don't. Have you? When have we? Like, no, there's no such thing as ironing. Okay, there's just not on the road. I'm just permanently wrinkled, and every year I realize that. CherylLeutjen.com. And Joe, in closing, anything else that we should make sure we spotlight for Northeast Trees?
I think I've covered a lot. I mean, I want to encourage people to get involved. We have been around for a long time, and we're still I talk, I'm the director of development, so I talk to new donors all the time. How did you find out about us? More and more people are finding us organically, which I love. But I just wanted to say that I think, we're such a unique organization, and there's not another design build nonprofit who combines the parks and the water conservation and the urban forestry and the workforce development and school greening quite like us. There's a lot of great organizations in Los Angeles, but we are very unique, and kind of like Cheryl said, we touch people's lives in a different way. We really make long lasting impacts. We've talked to there's a parent at Buchanan who used to work on our crew, and her brother used to work on our crew, and she still stays in touch with us, and she still talks about us in this way that's so beautiful. And that's what we do. We are a dedicated organization that creates, we have a lifelong commitment to these communities. And I just think I wanted to emphasize that, and I want to encourage people to come out and join us. We have, like I said, first Saturday of each month, we have a nursery event at Ascot Hills Park. It's free, and it's a great way to connect with our team and meet our team and get involved. And then from there, you can increase your volunteer time. You can donate, you can get involved in some of the projects. And I would just encourage people to really learn more about us and come meet us and plant a tree with us.
Okay. I want to go plant a tree.
Yes.
Because it tells us that, hey, we have a future. Whenever you plant a tree, you're planting for the future. It's a good feeling. Thank you so much, everyone. NortheastTrees.org is a place to go. Check out the episode notes. Thank you. Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com.